What would you do if a little boy with no coat gave away the only warmth he had and unknowingly changed the life of a millionaire hiding in plain sight? Detroit's winter didn't care who you were, especially not a 7-year-old boy named Malik Turner. He walked alone down Main Street, his small hands stuffed deep in the pockets of an old, too-short brown jacket. Snowflakes danced in the air, melting on his cheeks before he could brush them away. His shoes were worn, the soles thin, and each step sent a chill up his legs like a quiet warning. Hurry home. But Malik didn't hurry. Not yet. He had just finished school and picked up a loaf of bread and a carton of milk from the corner store. His mother, Vanessa Turner, worked double shifts at the diner, and every penny counted. Malik never complained. He was used to skipping things: new toys, hot lunches, even a scarf, but he never complained. As he passed by the old laundromat and rounded the corner near an abandoned storefront, he saw something, or rather, someone hunched against the brick wall. It was a man, older, dirty, shivering. His arms were wrapped tightly around his knees, and he wore layers of tattered clothing that looked more like rags than anything meant to keep out the cold. His lips had turned blue, his eyes were shut, his chin resting on his chest like he was trying to disappear into himself. Malik stopped walking. The world around him blurred for a moment, the blinking traffic light, the faint sound of a bus engine, the rustling of wind across trash cans. All Malik could see was the man. He looked empty, lost. Malik reached into his pocket and pulled out the 3 crumpled dollar bills he'd earned last weekend, helping his upstairs neighbor shovel snow. Slowly, he stepped forward. "Sir?" Malik's voice was small. "You okay?" The man stirred, barely lifting his head. His eyes met Malik's for a second. They were tired eyes, heavy. I got some money," Malik offered, his voice almost apologetic. "It ain't much, but maybe you could get something warm with it." The man didn't speak. He just shook his head and gave the faintest smile, sad, grateful, and utterly worn out. Malik stood there, frozen, not from the cold this time, but from something deeper. His little hands clutched the bills, unsure what to do. He looked down at them, then back at the man's thin frame. He knew. Money wouldn't help, not tonight, not in this cold. Without another word, Malik did something no one else on that street thought to do. He unzipped his jacket. The wind bit at his chest immediately, slicing through his sweatshirt like knives. He wanted to turn around, to run home, to forget what he saw. But he didn't. He knelt beside the man and gently draped the jacket over his shoulders. "You need this more than I do," Malik whispered. "Just keep warm, okay?" The man's eyes widened in disbelief. His lips trembled, not from cold this time, but from something else. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Malik didn't wait for a thank you. He stood up quickly, arms wrapped tightly around himself. His small body was already starting to shiver. He walked away, faster this time, turning the corner and breaking into a near run. His arms burned from the cold and his face stung with wind. By the time he reached the apartment building, he could barely feel his fingers. His mother opened the door just as he reached it. Her eyes widened. "Malik!" "Where's your jacket?" He tried to smile through chattering teeth. "I gave it to someone who needed it." Vanessa stared at him, speechless. She pulled him inside, wrapped him in the nearest blanket, and pressed her hands against his frozen cheeks. "You'll catch pneumonia out there," she whispered, her voice tight with worry. "I'm okay," Malik said, though his lips were purple. I couldn't leave him like that." She held him close, rocking gently. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The apartment was still, no heat humming from the vents, no TV on in the background. Just the quiet breath of a mother and son, trying to stay warm together. Later that night, Malik lay in bed under 2 blankets. He still couldn't shake the image of the old man's face, the way he looked at him. like no one had ever given him anything before. It was just a jacket. But it was the only one Malik had. The next morning, Malik Turner woke up shivering. The 2 blankets his mother had tucked around him the night before had slipped off during the night, and without his jacket, the chill crept into his bones. His throat felt dry, scratchy. He coughed into his elbow and slowly sat up, rubbing his arms. The little apartment was still cold. The radiator clanged, trying its best to fight off the Michigan winter, but it wasn't enough. In the kitchen, his mother, Vanessa Turner, was already up. She stood in her faded robe, making oatmeal and humming softly to herself, though her eyes still looked tired. When she turned and saw Malik, her face shifted instantly. "Baby," she said, crossing the room. "You're up early. You look pale." "I'm fine," Malik lied. "Just cold." She handed him a steaming cup of tea. "Drink this, slowly." Malik cupped it between his hands, grateful for the warmth. He glanced at the front door, half expecting to see his old jacket hanging there. But it wasn't, and part of him didn't regret it, not yet. "You still going to school today?" Vanessa asked. "Yeah," he said. "I got math." "Can't fall behind." His mother opened the closet by the front door, searching for something. She pulled out an old hoodie, thin and frayed around the cuffs. "It's not much," she said. "But it's better than nothing." Malik pulled it over his head and gave her a smile. "Thanks, Mom." By the time he stepped outside, the cold smacked him hard. The wind whipped across his cheeks, biting into his arms through the thin hoodie. He pulled the hood over his head, shoved his hands into his pockets, and kept walking, shoulders hunched. About halfway to school, he heard someone call out behind him, "Yo, Malik!" He turned to see Jalen Brooks bundled up in a thick puffer coat and scarf, jogging to catch up. "Where's your jacket, man?" Jalen asked, squinting. Malik gave a shrug. "Gave it to someone." Jalen blinked. "You what?" "There was this old man yesterday. He was freezing. I couldn't just walk by." Jalen stared at him for a long second, then sighed and unwound the thick scarf from around his neck. "Here," he said, shoving it at Malik. "I've got another at home. You're gonna freeze." Malik hesitated, then took it, wrapping it tightly around his face. "Thanks," he mumbled, his voice muffled. Jalen nodded. "Just don't give that one away too." They laughed a little, just enough to lighten the cold, and walked the rest of the way together. At school, Malik sat in the back of math class trying to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting to the man from the alley, to his mom's worried eyes, to the growing ache in his throat. By lunchtime, he was exhausted. He sat at a table alone in the cafeteria, nursing a peanut butter sandwich, his shoulders hunched against the cold draft coming from the window behind him. The scarf helped, but his body hadn't fully warmed up since yesterday. "Mind if I sit here?" a voice asked. Malik looked up to see Ava Johnson, a girl from his history class, holding a lunch tray. "Yeah, sure," he said, moving his backpack aside. She sat, her eyes scanning his thin hoodie and chapped hands. "You look freezing," she said gently. "I'm fine. Where's your coat?" "I gave it to someone," Malik said, trying to sound casual. Ava tilted her head. "You gave your coat away? In this weather?" He nodded. She didn't mock him, didn't ask why. Instead, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a pair of blue gloves. "They're my brother's," she said, "but he never uses them. You need them more." Malik's throat tightened. He accepted them with quiet gratitude and slipped them on. They were too big but warm. "Thanks, Ava." "No problem," she said with a smile. "Just try to stay warm, okay?" That afternoon, Malik felt a little better. The scarf from Jalen, the gloves from Ava. The kind words. None of it was flashy, but it was real. And for a boy who gave away everything he had, it felt like the world was giving just a little back. Still, the ache in his chest and throat lingered, and by the time the final bell rang, Malik's energy was running out. He walked home slowly, his thoughts drifting. When he reached the alley where he had seen the man yesterday, He stopped. The spot was empty, just bricks, trash, wind. He looked around for signs of life, but there were none. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a faint rustling sound. Malik stepped closer, peering behind a large dumpster. And there, huddled under his old brown jacket, was the man. His eyes fluttered open. "You," he rasped. Malik knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" The man gave a faint nod. "Better. Because of you." Malik bit his lip. His voice dropped. "You need anything?" "Food? A blanket?" The man shook his head. "No, son. You've done more than anyone. You gave me hope." Malik's eyes burned with tears. He reached out and gently touched the man's shoulder. "I wish I could do more." "You already have," the man whispered. "You saved me." Malik stayed for a few more minutes, silent beside him, then stood. "Take care of yourself, okay?" The man nodded again. "You too, son." As Malik turned and walked away, scarf pulled high and gloves tight around his fingers, he felt something shift. He was still cold, still poor, still hurting, but inside, where it mattered most, he felt warm. That night, the wind howled outside like a wounded animal. The windows rattled in their frames, and even with the scarf, gloves, and old hoodie, Malik Turner couldn't shake the chill from his bones. His mother, Vanessa Turner, wrapped him in another blanket and sat next to him on the couch. "You're warm enough now?" she asked softly. "I'm okay," Malik said, though he wasn't sure it was true. His throat still hurt, and every breath came with a sting. But the memory of the old man in the alley, wrapped in Malik's jacket, still alive, was enough to keep him from complaining. Vanessa rubbed his back gently. "I still can't believe you gave your coat away, baby." "He needed it," Malik said simply. She sighed, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. "You've got a good heart, Malik, but I just wish the world wasn't so hard on you." "It's okay, Mum," he said, resting his head on her shoulder. "It'll get better." She kissed the top of his head and didn't say another word. The next morning, Malik woke to the smell of oatmeal and fried eggs. The sun had barely risen, but his mother was already bustling in their small kitchen. "Morning, baby," she said, handing him a warm mug of tea. "Your voice any better?" Malik shook his head and coughed. "Still scratchy. You should stay home today." "I can't," he said. "We've got math." Vanessa chuckled. "You and that math." He smiled weakly, ate his breakfast slowly, and put on the same old hoodie and scarf before heading out into the cold. It was just another school day, until he turned the corner toward their building that afternoon. That's when he saw it. A limousine, long, sleek, black, parked right outside his apartment building like it had no business being there. Malik blinked, stunned. He'd never seen a car like that in his neighborhood. His first thought was that someone must be lost, maybe a wedding nearby. Then the back door opened. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped out. He looked around, his eyes scanning the sidewalk until they landed on Malik. "You must be Malik Turner," the man said with a smile. Malik froze. Yeah." "Who are you?" The man walked over, hands in his coat pockets. "I'm here on behalf of someone you helped recently." Malik's heart thudded. "The man? In the alley?" The suited man nodded. "Mr. Charles Whitmore. He asked me to find you." Malik's mouth fell open. "But he was homeless." The man's smile softened. "He was disguised. He does this every winter, goes out to see how people truly treat those with nothing. To remind himself of what matters." Malik couldn't breathe for a moment. "So he's rich?" "One of the wealthiest men in the city," the man said gently. "But more importantly, he's someone who was deeply moved by what you did." He stepped aside and opened the limo door wider. "There's something he wanted you to have." Malik approached slowly, still unsure if this was a dream. Inside the limo was a box, wrapped in dark blue paper, sitting neatly on the leather seat. The man picked it up and handed it to Malik. He asked that you open it. Malik's fingers trembled as he pulled back the paper. Inside was a brand new winter coat, thick, heavy, lined with fleece, the kind of coat that looked like it could laugh in the face of a blizzard. I don't, Malik began. The man placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. He said this wasn't charity. This was a thank you. You gave what little you had. He wants to make sure you're taken care of. Malik pulled the coat out and held it in his arms. It was soft and warm even before he put it on. Try it, the man said. Malik slipped it on. It fit perfectly, like it was made for him. Tears welled in his eyes. Tell him thank you, Malik whispered. I will, the man said. Then he smiled again. But that's not all. Malik looked up, surprised. He also made a donation, a large one. In your name. Malik blinked. To where? The man pointed up the block. To a community center nearby. They've been struggling. He said your act of kindness reminded him that real change doesn't come from big gestures. It comes from small ones. From people like you. Malik was speechless. Would you and your mom be willing to come see it tomorrow? The man asked. There's something he wants to show you both. Malik nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The man tipped his head. Good, I'll be back. And just like that, the limo pulled away, disappearing into the cold afternoon. Malik stood there, his new coat wrapped around him, heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, it felt like something good was finally on the way. When he got upstairs, he knocked on the door. His mother opened it, her eyes widening when she saw him. Malik, what is that? He stepped inside, held out his arms, and twirled once. It's a gift, he said, from the man I gave my coat to. Vanessa touched the coat, her fingers moving over the fabric like she didn't trust it was real. It must have cost a fortune. He said I deserved it. She blinked back tears. You do. Then she pulled him into a long, tight hug. I'm so proud of you, baby. Malik closed his eyes, holding on to that moment like it was something sacred. Because somehow, in the middle of a Detroit winter, he finally felt warm. The next morning, Malik Turner woke before the sun. Not because of the cold. This time he was warm. The new coat hung on the back of his chair, heavy and inviting, like a quiet promise that today would be different. In the kitchen, Vanessa Turner was already awake, sipping coffee by the window. She looked over and smiled when she saw him. You're up early again, she said. Malik nodded, rubbing his eyes. I didn't want to be late. The man said we should see the community center today. Vanessa took a slow breath. I still can't believe it. A man you helped turns out to be a millionaire? Malik smiled sheepishly. I didn't know. He just looked like someone who needed help. She walked over, brushed a hand through his curls and kissed his forehead. That's the kind of heart you have. And that's something no money can buy. They bundled up Malik in his new coat, Vanessa in her old one with a broken zipper, and waited on the curb. Right on time, the black limousine pulled up. This time, Vanessa was the one blinking in disbelief. A familiar man in a suit stepped out. Good morning, Mrs. Turner. Malik, ready? They both nodded. Malik climbed in first, still not used to the leather seats or soft lighting. Vanessa sat beside him, quietly taking in every detail like it was all too fragile to touch. The ride was silent for a few minutes. Malik kept fiddling with the zipper on his coat, his thoughts racing. Where are we going exactly? Vanessa finally asked. The man smiled. It's not far. Just a few blocks away. Mr. Whitmore wanted you to see the place he's helped restore inspired by your son. Vanessa blinked. Mr. Whitmore, that's the man in the alley. He nodded. That's right. But he's more than that. He grew up not far from here, and he's never forgotten what it feels like to be invisible. The limousine pulled up to an old brick building. The sign above the door had been freshly painted, Eastwood Community Center. A woman in a warm grey sweater stood at the entrance waving. "That's Miss Regina Hayes," the man said. "She runs the center." As Malik and his mom stepped out, Ms. Hayes greeted them warmly. "Malik," she said, bending slightly to meet his eyes. "I've been waiting to meet you. You've caused quite the stir around here." Malik blushed. "I didn't mean to." "Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest acts," she said gently. "Come inside. It's warmer in there." They followed her in. The hallway smelled like cinnamon and clean floors. Posters lined the walls, messages of encouragement, drawings from local kids, photos of past events, but many looked dated and faded, like the center had been asleep for years. Until now. They stepped into a large common room where sunlight poured through tall windows. There were kids playing board games, a few teens organizing books on shelves, and two women preparing snacks in the kitchen. "This place," Vanessa whispered. "It feels alive," Ms. Hayes nodded. "It wasn't like this 2 weeks ago. We were barely open. We didn't have heat some days. But then, we got a donation." She looked at Malik. "He told us what you did. Said it reminded him why this place mattered. He didn't just give money. He gave us back our purpose." Malik looked around, stunned. His coat, his small sacrifice had led to this. A warm hand touched his shoulder. "There's more," Ms. Hayes said. "Come with me." She led them down a hallway into a smaller room. On the wall was a large corkboard. Pinned to it was a crayon drawing of a boy giving his coat to a man sitting on the ground. Above the picture, in shaky but bold letters, someone had written, "Kindness changes everything." Malik stared at it. His throat tightened. "That's you, isn't it?" Vanessa whispered beside him. He nodded slowly, overcome. "We didn't know his name at the time," Ms. Hayes said, "but every child here knows this story now. You're not just helping one man, Malik, you're helping hundreds." Just then, the door creaked open. Mr. Charles Whitmore stepped in. No longer in rags, he wore a simple wool coat, his silver hair combed neatly. He smiled when he saw Malik. "I had to see you again," he said. Malik walked over slowly. "You look different." "I feel different, Mr. Whitmore replied. "Because of you." He knelt slightly, eye to eye with Malik. "You didn't know who I was. You had nothing, but you still gave. That kind of generosity. It's rare." Malik looked down, suddenly shy. "Mr. Whitmore reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I have something else for you," he said, handing it over. Malik opened it. Inside was a silver watch, simple, elegant. "It belonged to my father," Mr. Whitmore said softly. "He always told me, time is the most valuable thing you can give someone, and you gave me more time. You gave me hope." Vanessa gasped. "Sir, that's too much." "No," he said, standing. "It's just enough." Malik slipped the watch on. It felt heavy, solid. "Important. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Mr. Whitmore smiled. "You already said it without a single word. Now it's our turn to follow your lead." He turned to Ms. Hayes. "Let's show them the new plans." The group walked to another room where blueprints were spread across a table. There were plans for after-school tutoring, job training programs, winter coat drives, and a holiday meal program all starting next month. "All of this," Ms. Hayes said, "will carry your name, Malik. The Malik Turner Youth Initiative." Vanessa covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. "My baby," Malik blinked. "But I didn't do all this. I just gave away a coat. And that coat, Mr. Whitmore said, was the first domino." Malik looked at everyone in the rooms, Hayes, Mr. Whitmore, his mother. Then he looked down at the watch on his wrist. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just part of something bigger. He had started it. The days that followed were unlike anything Malik Turner had ever experienced. At school, people looked at him differently, not with pity, but with respect. Teachers nodded warmly when he walked into class. Students who'd never said a word to him before now offered high fives in the hallway. Even the janitor called out, "There goes the young man with the heart of gold." But Malik didn't care much for attention. Not really. What mattered to him now was Eastwood Community Center. Every day after school, Malik walked straight there. His new winter coat kept him warm, but the energy inside the building kept his spirit alive. Miss Regina Hayes, the center's director, quickly put him to work. She handed him a clipboard the second he stepped through the door. "We've got coats to organize, a book drive to sort, and we're short on hands for the after-school reading hour," she said with a grin. Malik didn't hesitate. "I'm in." That afternoon, he sat in a circle of younger kids, reading The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. They listened, wide-eyed, as he described the adventures of a boy who stomped through snow just like they had that morning. One little girl, probably 5, tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "You're like a superhero, huh?" Malik blinked. "What makes you say that?" She pointed at the drawing on the wall, the one of him giving away his coat. "You help people," she said simply. Malik didn't know what to say. His cheeks burned. All he could do was smile and keep reading. Meanwhile, word spread beyond the center's walls. A local journalist heard about the story and reached out to Mr. Hayes. Then came the reporter. Then the cameras. Malik wasn't prepared for that part. They asked him to stand in front of the center's entrance while they interviewed him. "So Malik," the reporter asked, "why did you give your only jacket to a stranger?" Malik shrugged. "He looked cold." The reporter smiled. "That's it?" "That's it," Malik said. "I just didn't want to walk away. Simple." Honest. And by the next morning, that quote was on the front page of the Detroit Tribune under the headline, "Boy's Small Act Sparks a Citywide Movement." That same day, a stack of boxes arrived at Eastwood. Donated winter coats. Then more, then shoes, gloves, books, school supplies. The center had to convert an empty storage room into a sorting area. Ms. Hayes called it the Hope Room. People from every walk of life showed up, retirees, college students, a single dad who said, "My son's alive because a stranger once gave him a blanket, I had to pay it forward." Malik helped carry boxes, tape up posters and greet new volunteers. But the most surprising face to walk through the doors that week was Jalen Brooks. "Yo," Jalen said, stepping in with his hands in his pockets. "Heard you're running the place now." Malik laughed. "Hardly." "Ms. Hayes is the boss." Jalen nodded. "Yeah, but everyone keeps talking about you. Like, you're the reason this place is on fire right now in a good way." Malik looked around. The warmth, the laughter, the shelves filling up with essentials, the kids sitting in corners, reading, the volunteers sorting donations. It did feel like fire, but not the kind that destroys, the kind that spreads hope. "You staying to help?" Malik asked. Jalen shrugged. "You got anything that doesn't involve glue sticks and glitter?" "We need help loading crates into the van." "Perfect," Jalen said. And just like that, his friend was back at his side, not just on the walk home, but in this mission. One afternoon, Ava Johnson showed up too. She wore her usual green knit cap and a quiet smile. "I heard the art program's starting up," she said. Malik lit up. "Yeah, it's kind of a mess right now, though. We've got paints, but no one to lead the kids." Ava's eyes sparkled. "Well, I draw a little." That night, she stayed late painting murals with some of the younger girls. Bright blues and yellows swirled across the once bare walls. Trees, stars, people holding hands. On one wall, Ava added something extra, a tiny figure in a brown coat, offering it to someone shivering. She didn't say anything, but when Malik saw it, he just stood there. "That's me," he whispered. Ava smiled. "It's all of us." At home, Vanessa watched it all unfold with quiet pride. Her son had become something of a local legend. But more than that, he had become a bridge between the wealthy and the poor, between generations, between strangers and neighbors. One evening, she came to pick him up from the center and found him sitting with an elderly man, playing checkers. She waited patiently until he looked up. "Ready, Mum?" She nodded. "You staying warm?" Malik smiled. "Yeah, thanks to the coat." She watched him walk toward her, tall for his age, shoulders straight. Something had shifted in him. He had found purpose, and it had started with one simple choice. He didn't walk away. It was a Saturday morning when Ms. Regina Hayes called Malik Turner into her office. The community center was unusually quiet. The art room was empty. The basketballs were still in the bin. Most kids were home resting or visiting family. Only a few volunteers buzzed around the main hall, sorting winter clothing. Malik had just finished helping Jalen Brooks organize donated boots when Ms. Hayes appeared in the doorway. "Malik, you've got a letter." Malik raised an eyebrow. "A letter?" She nodded, holding up a large envelope. Handwritten, no return address. That was odd. Most people texted or emailed. Even donation acknowledgements came through the office printer. Malik wiped his hands on his jeans and followed her to the small office in the back. She handed it to him gently, like it was something sacred. Malik sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of stationery lined, written in careful cursive. He began to read silently. Then aloud, "Dear Malik, you don't know me, but I saw you on the news. I saw what you did. I saw how a boy with nothing gave away the one thing keeping him warm just so someone else could survive the night. That boy reminded me of my own son." Malik stopped, swallowed hard. "My son passed away 5 winters ago. He was homeless. He had left home at 18, angry at the world, and we lost touch. One night, he collapsed in an alley not far from where you gave that man your coat. No one helped him. I often wondered, if just one person had stopped, would he still be alive?" The room was silent. Miss Hayes stood by the door, her hand to her chest. Malik blinked through the sting in his eyes and kept reading. "I cried when I saw your story. Not just because of what you did, but because you gave someone else the ending I prayed for. I can't bring my son back, but I can honor him by helping kids like you." At the bottom of the page was a signature, Helen S. Monroe. And one final line, "A donation has been made to Eastwood Community Center in my son's memory because kindness deserves to grow." Malik looked up slowly. "Mizzy." Hayes's voice was thick with emotion. "That letter came with a check." He didn't speak. "She donated $50,000 to the center, Malik. Because of you." Malik's hands trembled as he folded the letter and held it to his chest. He didn't know who Helen Monroe was. He didn't need to. But in that moment, he understood something deeper than before. Kindness doesn't end when you give it. It echoes. That afternoon, the center buzzed with new purpose. Ms. Hayes gathered the staff and volunteers and read the letter aloud. Some cried. Others nodded silently. Even the older boys, too cool to show emotion, cleared their throats and looked away. "We're going to build a mentorship wing, Miss Simpson," Hayes said. "Tutoring rooms, a computer lab. And we'll name it after her son." Malik asked softly, "What was his name?" Ms. Hayes looked down at the bottom of the check stub. "Marcus Monroe." Jalen clapped Malik on the shoulder. "That's a legacy, man." Malik didn't reply. He just stared out the window, imagining the face of a boy he'd never meet, but somehow helped save someone else through his memory. Later that week, Ava Johnson surprised everyone again. "I have something I want to show you," she told Malik, tugging him into the art room. On the far wall was a mural still covered in a white sheet. "Close your eyes," she said. Malik obeyed. He heard the rustle of fabric, the quiet gasp from a few kids nearby, then, "Open them." He did. And what he saw took his breath away. The mural was painted in bold colors. At its center was a young boy in a brown jacket, kneeling to wrap it around a shivering man on a frozen street. Around the image were ripples waves of color expanding outward, touching images of others, a mother hugging her son, a food pantry being stocked, a girl giving a pair of gloves to someone in need, a boy planting a tree. At the top were the words, "It started with a coat." Malik stared at it, silent. "I didn't want it to be just about you," Ava said softly. "I wanted it to be about what you caused. This is your ripple effect." Malik blinked back tears. "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered. Ava smiled. "Then let's keep it going." That Friday night, the community center hosted its first open house since the renovations began. Families came. City council members showed up. News crews returned. There were balloons, music, hot cocoa, and a slideshow of photos showing the transformation of Eastwood over the past month. At the end of the night, Mrs. Hayes took the microphone. "I want to thank someone," she said. "Someone who reminded us what this center is all about. Someone who gave, not from his wallet, but from his heart." She looked at Malik. "Come on up here, Malik Turner." He hesitated, cheeks burning, but Jalen pushed him gently forward. "Go, man, you earned it." Malik walked up to the small stage. He could feel every eye on him. He cleared his throat. Then, in a quiet, steady voice, he said, "I didn't do anything big. I didn't plan to start anything. I just saw someone cold, and I couldn't walk by." He looked at the crowd, their faces soft with emotion. "I think, if more of us stopped walking by, the world would change faster than we think." A pause. Then someone clapped. Then everyone did. And in that moment, standing on a makeshift stage in a once-forgotten building, Malik Turner realized something. This wasn't just about a coat. This was about choosing compassion when no one's watching. And that choice had changed everything. Snow was falling lightly on Detroit again. Not the harsh, biting snow from a month ago, the kind that made bones ache, but the kind that felt quiet, gentle, like a blanket being tucked in by the sky. Malik Turner stood outside Eastwood Community Center, his breath puffing in slow, even clouds. His new coat, gifted by Mr. Charles Whitmore, still looked brand new, even though it had become part of his daily uniform. Inside the center, laughter rang out. Kids played board games. Older teens were decorating sugar cookies. Volunteers were stringing up lights for a holiday dinner happening that weekend. And Malik, he was waiting for someone. He checked his watch, the silver one Mr. Whitmore had given him, the one that used to belong to his father. It was nearly 4 o'clock. "Malik!" He turned. A middle-aged man in a flannel jacket stepped out of a city bus with a boy beside him, maybe 9 years old, with wide eyes and a thin hoodie that looked a size too small. The man approached with hesitant steps. "You the one in charge here?" Malik smiled. "Not in charge, but I can help." The man shifted uncomfortably. "I'm James." "This is my son, Eli. We just moved in down the street. I heard y'all have coats?" Malik's smile widened. "We do." He motioned them inside. "Come on, let's get him fitted." The warmth of the center wrapped around them as they stepped in. Eli's eyes darted around the colorful walls, the kids playing, the smell of cinnamon from the kitchen. It was more than a shelter, it felt like a second home. "Over here," Malik said, leading them to the Hope Room. The shelves were full, coats of every size, gloves, scarves, even winter boots. He turned to Eli and smiled. Pick whichever one feels best. Try a few on. The boy hesitated, then reached for a navy blue coat with orange lining. He slipped it on. It fit perfectly. Malik knelt down, zipped it up for him, then grabbed a scarf from the nearby bin. There, he said. Now you're ready for Michigan winter? Eli smiled, a shy, thankful smile. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. James nodded, his voice quiet. I can't believe this is free. Malik stood. It's not free. It was paid for by people who believe no one should be cold. James swallowed, eyes glossy. Thank you. I mean it. Malik gave a small shrug. Someone helped me once too. That evening, Vanessa Turner arrived at the center to pick Malik up, just like she always did. She stepped inside, shook snow from her boots, and spotted her son talking to Ms. Regina Hayes at the front desk. She approached slowly, listening in. We've had more families this week than ever, Regina was saying. We need to think bigger. Malik nodded. What if we used the back lot for the dinner this Saturday? Set up heaters and string lights, make it feel like a real celebration. Regina's eyes lit up. Malik, that's actually brilliant. Vanessa watched him, her son just 7 years old, speaking with purpose, suggesting ideas, coordinating volunteers. There was no trace of the shy boy who once kept his head down in school. He was becoming something more. A connector. A leader. And she couldn't have been prouder. Saturday came fast. Malik arrived early, bundled up and carrying 2 grocery bags filled with canned goods. The center buzzed with energy volunteers, hanging lights outside, folding tables being covered with festive tablecloths, and Ava painting a hand-drawn welcome banner that read, "A place for everyone." By late afternoon, the parking lot behind Eastwood had transformed into something magical. There were string lights overhead. Music played softly from a speaker. Long tables were set with hot dishes turkey, sweet potatoes, macaroni and cheese, cornbread, pies, and warm cider. People began to arrive. Families with young kids, seniors who lived alone, teens from the neighborhood who usually kept to themselves. And they all found a seat. Malik stood off to the side for a moment, just watching. One by one, chairs filled. Strangers talked, laughter echoed. Someone started a caroling circle. Ms. Hayes handed out thank you cards to every volunteer. Mr. Whitmore even made a quiet appearance, helping serve mashed potatoes without saying a word about who he was. Jalen came up beside Malik, plate already stacked with food. This is kind of wild, he said, eyes scanning the crowd. All this from one coat, Malik smiled. Crazy, huh? Jalen nudged him. No. Beautiful. Then Ava walked up, tucking her gloves into her coat pocket. Hey, she said. Hey, Malik replied. She held up a paper. I want to show you something. We're putting it in the newsletter. It was a picture of the dinner setup, taken from the roof. Beneath it was a headline. From one small act to a bigger table. Malik read it twice, quietly. He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. Then he looked around at the tables, the food, the people, the glow of the lights against snowfall. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about what people became when they were invited in, when they felt seen, when they were warm. He turned to Ava and Jalen. Let's eat, he said. And together they walked toward the table Malik helped build, not with money, not with power, but with one simple act of kindness. The Monday after the holiday dinner, the world seemed quieter. Snow blanketed Detroit in soft silence, muting the usual hum of buses and barking dogs. But inside Eastwood Community Center, the afterglow of Saturday's gathering still lingered like warmth left in a coat after someone's gone. Malik Turner sat at the reading table with 3 second graders, sounding out words from Charlotte's Web. They leaned in closer to every sentence he read, even though he'd read the same chapter twice already. He didn't mind. The story was about kindness, loyalty. And those were things he understood now, not just from books, but from life. When he finished the page, one of the kids, Tina, a girl with oversized glasses, tugged his sleeve. "Malik," she whispered, "can I tell you a secret?" He leaned closer. "Sure." She cupped her hands and whispered, "I used to be scared to come here, but now I love it." Malik smiled. "That's not a secret," he said. "That's the best thing I've heard all day." In the main office, Miss Regina Hayes shuffled through a stack of envelopes, donations, volunteer sign-ups. One letter, however, caught her eye. She turned it over. Gold seal, thick parchment, her brow furrowed as she opened it. Then she gasped. "Malik!" she called. He came running. Ms. Hayes held out the letter, her eyes wide. "You need to read this." He took it. Read slowly. "Dear Malik Turner, on behalf of the State Board for Youth Engagement, we are honored to inform you that you have been selected to receive the first annual Young Citizens Impact Award." Malik blinked. "Your actions have inspired not only your community, but people across the state. What began with one selfless actor boy giving away his only coat has become a model for grassroots kindness and youth-led impact. We'd be proud to honor you at the state capitol this February." Below was a printed signature and a phone number. Malik looked up, stunned. "The Capitol? As in, the real one?" Ms. Hayes beamed. "Looks like Lansing just found out what we already knew." He didn't know what to say. He didn't do any of this to get noticed. And yet, the ripples he created kept circling back. When he told his mum that night, Vanessa Turner dropped her spoon in the sink. "They're taking you to Lansing?" she asked, eyes wide. "That's what the letter says." She sat down slowly at the kitchen table, processing her baby boy, the one who used to come home with scraped knees and empty pockets, the one who'd stood shivering on her doorstep a month ago without a jacket. Now he was being honored by the state. Tears formed in her eyes. "Can parents come?" Malik smiled. They said yes. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, something shifted around Malik. He wasn't just a helper at Eastwood anymore. He was part of its core team. Ms. Hayes gave him a seat at planning meetings. Volunteers took his ideas seriously. New teens, some of whom used to scoff at the idea of charity, started asking how they could pitch in. And Mr. Charles Whitmore, he started stopping by regularly, not in a limo, not in disguise. Just as Charles. One afternoon, he sat with Malik in the center's small kitchen, sipping coffee from a styrofoam cup. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said. Malik laughed. "You were this short?" Whitmore chuckled. "No, not the height. The drive. The belief that if something's broken, you fix it, even if you've only got your two hands." Malik glanced down at his hands. "Sometimes it feels small." "Good," Charles said. "That means you're doing it right, because the right kind of work always starts small." Then he leaned in. "After the state event, how would you feel about starting a leadership program here, for kids your age? Led by you." Malik's eyes widened. "You mean, like, a real program?" Charles nodded. "You've already proven people will follow your example. Now it's time to teach others how to lead with heart." Malik didn't answer right away, but something inside him shifted again. Not a boy reacting to kindness anymore, but a young man preparing to multiply it. The night before the ceremony in Lansing, Malik couldn't sleep. His new coat hung by the door. His good shoes were polished. Ms. Hayes had even arranged for a professional to press his shirt and slacks. He looked ready. But in his heart, he felt the same. Not bigger, not special. Just Malik. The boy who once walked home through the cold and gave away the only thing that kept him warm. That night, he sat at the window, watching snow fall in soft spirals under the streetlights. Then he pulled out a notebook and wrote something simple. "You don't have to be famous to matter. You just have to care when no one else will." Empty. He tore the page out, folded it, and tucked it in the pocket of his coat. Not for anyone else. Just to remind himself why this all began. The steps of the Michigan State Capitol had never felt so tall. Malik Turner, just 7 years old, stood in a pressed grey suit, nervous fingers brushing the edges of his jacket as the doors opened into the towering rotunda of marble and light. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood his mother, Vanessa Turner, radiant in a navy blue dress she had borrowed from a neighbor. On his other side, Miss Regina Hayes gave him an encouraging squeeze on the shoulder, and standing slightly behind, with a quiet smile, was Mr. Charles Whitmore, wearing a tie for the first time in years. The receptionist at the front desk leaned over and whispered, "They're ready for you, Malik." He nodded. They entered the chamber. The audience was full state officials, educators, non-profit leaders, even a handful of local news anchors. A banner above the stage read, "Young Citizens Impact Award Ceremony, celebrating kindness that sparks change." Malik took his seat up front, legs dangling off the chair. He tried not to bounce them. His heart thudded like a drum. Then the Lieutenant Governor stepped up to the podium. He spoke about service, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about how real leadership begins in the heart, not the headlines. And then he said Malik's name. The room erupted in applause. Malik froze for half a second, then stood, slowly, walking up the short flight of stairs onto the stage. The Lieutenant Governor bent down and handed him the award, a glass plaque in the shape of Michigan. Malik Turner, he said to the crowd, didn't have money or power or influence, but what he had was empathy, the courage to act when no one else did. That kind of bravery is what we want to see more of in this country. More applause. Cameras flashed. Malik stepped up to the microphone. He could barely see over the podium. A kind woman handed him a small wooden box to stand on. He gave her a grateful nod. He looked out at the sea of faces, adults, suits, cameras, strangers. Then at the very back he saw his mum. She smiled. He took a breath and spoke. "I didn't mean to start anything big. I didn't know one coat could turn into all this. I just saw someone who was cold. And I knew what that felt like." He paused. The room was quiet now, not out of boredom, out of reverence. A lot of people walk past someone who needs help. I used to do that too. But then I thought, what if no one helps them? What if I'm the only one who sees them? He swallowed. "I didn't give away my coat because I had extra. I gave it away because he needed it more. That's what my mom taught me. And now I teach it to other kids because the world gets better when we don't just care about ourselves." Another pause. Then, with a small smile, he added, "Also, if you give something good away, you get something better back. Not always in stuff, but in how you feel inside." He stepped down. People stood. The entire chamber rose to their feet for a standing ovation, not for a politician or a celebrity, but for a child who chose compassion when no one was watching. After the ceremony, they were ushered into a reception hall with cookies and juice. Malik sat quietly with Ava, Jalen, and his mum, holding the award with both hands like it might break if he breathed too hard. Reporters took turns asking questions. "What's next for you, Malik?" He shrugged. "Keep helping." One of them smiled. "That's simple, huh?" Malik nodded. It always was. That evening, back in Detroit, the entire Eastwood neighborhood gathered for a watch party at the community center. Ms. Hayes had set up a projector. Volunteers brought hot dogs, popcorn, and folding chairs. Kids ran around playing tag in their winter coats. When the video of Malik's speech played, a silence fell over the room. By the time he said, "I didn't give away my coat because I had extra," half the adults were dabbing at their eyes. At the end, Ms. Hayes turned to the group. "Who here has been helped by Malik or this center?" Dozens of hands rose. A father in the back called out, Who here wants to be like Malik? Even more hands. It was more than a proud moment. It was a shift. Malik wasn't just a good kid anymore. He was a spark. A reminder. A reason. And across the room, from teens to elders, everyone felt it. That if he could make a difference, so could they. That night, when Malik finally got home, his mum tucked him in. He turned to her sleepily. "Did I do okay?" Vanessa brushed a curl from his forehead. "You made the whole world believe in something again," Malik smiled. As he drifted off, his fingers still held the edge of the award, but his heart held something greater, a mission. And he was just getting started. A year had passed. Detroit's streets still cracked with winter, and snow still fell in sheets, but something had changed. People smiled more, doors stayed open longer, and on the corner of Eastwood and Lambert, the once-forgotten community center had been renamed. Its new sign read, "The Malik Turner Center for Compassion," and just beneath it, in smaller letters, "One jacket, one boy, countless hearts changed." Malik, now 8, stood beside the sign at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, holding the oversized scissors with both hands. The mayor stood to his left, Ms. Hayes to his right, and a crowd of hundreds filled the street. Neighbors, families, city officials, and even the news again. But Malik wasn't nervous this time. He looked taller, not just in height, but in presence. The ribbon fluttered. The crowd clapped, and the boy who once gave away the only coat he had was now the namesake of a movement. After the ceremony, Malik wandered into the new wing of the center, the part funded entirely by donations inspired by his story. Inside were 3 rooms: the warmth room, full of jackets, blankets, gloves, and boots; the second chance room, a computer lab with mentors helping teens and adults build resumes or study for the GED; the hope room, a counseling space for families in crisis, with a quiet reading corner Malik had requested himself. He paused in front of a framed photograph on the wall. It was the very first coat he gave away, now clean, stitched, and mounted behind glass. Beneath it, a plaque read, "He didn't give it because he had many. He gave it because someone else had none." Malik touched the glass lightly. "I remember how cold it was that day," he whispered. A voice behind him spoke. "You made it warmer for all of us since then." It was Mr. Charles Whitmore, dressed in jeans and a coat not much newer than Malik's. He walked beside the boy, both of them quiet. After a long pause, Charles said, "You know, I used to believe that big changes required big people, CEOs, governors, billionaires." Malik looked up. "Not anymore." Charles smiled. "Not since you." They walked together toward the exit, where a long line of families had formed outside, waiting for food, coats, and sometimes just a little kindness. Malik opened the door for the next guest. An elderly woman stepped in, shaking the snow from her coat. He offered a soft smile. "Welcome. We're glad you're here." Later that evening, back home, Vanessa Turner tucked Malik into bed. She sat at the edge, just like always, brushing the hair from his eyes. "Did you ever think," she asked gently, "that all this would come from that one day?" Malik shook his head. "No." She waited. Then he added, "I just didn't want someone to freeze, that's all." Vanessa's eyes filled. "And now, no one has to—" "Because of you." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that wraps around you like a quilt. Then Malik whispered, "Mom?" "Yes?" "What if I hadn't done it? What if I'd just walked home that day?" Vanessa leaned in and kissed his forehead. "Then the world would have missed its reminder." "Reminder of what?" She smiled through her tears. "That one small boy can warm an entire city." The next morning, before school, Malik passed by the front desk of the center. A new family had come, in a mother and 2 children. The younger one, a boy about 5, looked up at Malik and pointed. Mom, that's the jacket boy. Malik laughed softly. I guess I am. He knelt down and reached into the coat bin beside him. Need one that fits? He asked. The boy nodded eagerly. Malik helped him try on a bright red puffer coat with black sleeves. It swallowed the boy at first, but when zipped up, it fit just right. The little boy twirled. It's warm, Malik nodded. You'll be okay now. The boy beamed. Someday, I'm going to give one away too. Malik stood. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The ripple had become a wave. As the sun rose over Detroit, light filtered through the snow-laced streets, warming brick walls and cold hands. And in one corner of the city, because of a boy with a coat and a heart big enough to share it, something new was taking root. Not just a building. Not just a program, but a legacy, one that would outlive weather, politics, and even memory. A legacy of compassion. And it all began with a child who refused to walk past someone in need. Sometimes the smallest gesture becomes the loudest echo in the heart of a community. Malik Turner, a 7-year-old boy with nothing to spare, gave away his only winter jacket not for attention, but because someone needed it more. In doing so, he reminded us that compassion doesn't require wealth, titles, or grand stages. It only requires a willing heart. For many older Americans, this story rekindles something we've always known. The strength of character is forged not in abundance, but in sacrifice. Malik didn't wait for someone else to act. He saw pain and responded with dignity. That single act sparked a movement, built a center, and warmed the lives of countless others. In a world that often glorifies power and possessions, his story brings us back to what matters most: human decency. Let us not grow numb to the needs around us. Whether through a kind word, a warm meal, or simply choosing to see someone society overlooks, we all carry the power to change a life. And sometimes changing one life is enough to change the world.